last subject I want to talk about this morning. No, I didn't save any queries. So just to refresh your memory here, I'm just gonna don't worry about this. I'm just gonna make a quick query here. Doesn't matter what one household is. And I pick and run this. Okay. So I got a query that creates an answer table, a dynamic table, right? And then I'm just going to save this, and I'll just call this demo 1. Okay. So the table goes away, but the query lives on. And so like whenever I double click on this, when I tell it to execute that query, it creates that table. So it pops back into existence, but it's a fresh copy of what's in the database. Okay, tables are static. Well, there's static tables and dynamic tables. This is a dynamic table because every time you run the query, it does a fresh run against the data. So if something's changed in the data, we'll have up-to-date data in our new table here. Okay. Now, we can use these queries in other queries because, in effect, it creates a table, right? So what it'll do when we tell it to use a query is it'll run that query, create that table, and then we can use that table just like we'd use any other table. And then so all the stuff that we just did in the previous set still holds. So we can do that sort of stuff. So the first query I want to do is okay, homes with pets and twins. Okay. I want a list of homes that have pets and twins. Okay. So in here, I've got this twins table still floating around, right? And so I need a list of homes that have pets. So I'll just create that. You know, we'll just call this here, right? So I need the household table, and we'll pick HHID. And really all I need here is pet owners. Yes. Right. And since I know this is going to be just a table that has pet owners, and I don't necessarily need to carry that on as a column or a field in my new one, right? So I've got that. And if I run that, there's a list of household ID numbers where they own a pet. Okay? So I'm just going to save that. And we'll just call this pet owners. There we go. That looks good. Okay, and then I can just close it. And I've got that query. Okay. Now, later in life, I want to pull, you know, people that we can call that have twins and pets or whatever, right? So we can do stuff with it. So we could do something like this. So I could go into query design. I need the twins table, right? And then in this show table thing, there's a tab called queries. See it? And then just pick the one you want, pet owners. Okay, like that. Okay. Now, there's no link between these two tables, so I want to make that link or it's going to take forever to run. So here I would just go HHID, click, drag, drop on the other HHID. And you won't see the little one-to-minis here because this is just a temporary link, but you'll see the link. So those two tables are linked together. Okay? Now, I can take advantage of the fact that when I do this, it's doing that inner join or the intersection of those two tables. So the only records that are going to show up in my output table are households that have an ID on both sides. So in effect, I've selected households that have twins. Does that make sense? So I'm using the join here as part of my selection process. And then I just pick, you know, whatever stuff I want, you know, I've got that. And then I can go ahead and do whatever I want to do. And so that'll create yet another list. And then I can use that in other places. So in general, that's how you use queries and other queries. And we can do stuff with it. All right. Questions about this one? Okay. Second question we can do stuff with. No. I want a list of households what did I say? They have an above average home value. Okay. So I'm just looking for people who have a house that's above average in terms of value. Okay. And I want to save that list so that I can use it in other places. So, I might want to use that with, match that up with cars or kids or whatever. So I just need that. I want that. All right. So I'm going to do this as a two-step process. First, well, I could export the data and calculate the average and then just hard code that number in there. But then that's going to over time, it's going to become more and more wrong because the housing information is going to be updated all the time and stuff like that. So to avoid all that, I'm going to have Access calculate the average for me, and then I'll use that in other places. Okay. So to calculate the average on something, create, query design. This case is just a household table because that's where the averages is. And the only one I really care about in this case is, what did I say? Home value. Okay. So I want to produce a summary statistic, so that says I need to use the totals query. So I'm going to turn that on. And then here's the trick I'm going to do. Okay, obviously I want the average of that. Like that, okay? Now if I don't give it a grouping variable, then it will group the entire table and it'll use the table as one big group. So in essence, I'm telling it to calculate the average for that column. Okay. Because it's just group everything into one group and calculate the summary statistic, which is the average. And then you can run that here. And there's my number. Okay. And then I can say, we'll just close this and save this as home value average. Okay. So that creates a table, a dynamic table. It creates a query statement, and then we can use that. So now I want to list the households that are above average in terms of home value. So we can go back into create, query design. I need the household table, and I need, from the queries, that home value average. Close. Okay. Everybody with me? All right. Now then, there's exactly one record in that home value average, right? That's all that's in there. So in this case, this is the one instance where you don't want to link these up, because what I want to do is I want to take all the households and add that average to each record. Okay. All right. Does that make sense? And so what we're essentially doing is it's just becoming a temporary field to the household table. Okay. So here's the one place where you don't want to link the two together. Now, what we need is a list of households that are above average. So there's that. I need the household ID number. And then over here, I'm going to use the builder to create an expression. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract, I'm going to go home value minus the average. Okay. So again, I don't want to type the whole thing in, so I'm just, clicking and picking. So I'll do that minus the average, which is in down here now. See, there's queries too, but they're tables just like anything else, right? And so I picked the one for home value average, and then of course there's the only one field in there, like that. Okay? So it's just an expression like we wrote last week, coming out of two different tables. And then we say OK. And now think about that for a second. If I take the value of a house and I subtract the average from it, if that quantity is above 0, that means the home value is above average. If the quantity or the result is less than 0, then it's below average. Right? And since I wanted a list of households that have above average home value, then down here I would just simply say greater than 0. And I'm just going to add those two fields in here so you can see, just so you can see what's going on. You don't need them, I'm just going to show you, all right? if you don't trust me, you can look at this and you'll notice that each one of those home values is bigger than the average. Okay. And so now I have a list of homes that are above average, and then if I want to, then if I want to subset them by New York or whatever, I can just add this query to other queries and do stuff with it. So you use queries and you build them up. So now here's what's happening. It grabs the household table. It brings it into memory. Then it grabs home value average. Well, it sees that's a query, so it runs that query at that very instance. And so it gets the fresh number. So when we run this, that number is up to date. Then it adds that to each record. And then if we tell it to keep certain records, it'll do that part next. All right. So again, understand the question, pick the tables, pick the fields, and it'll pick the records. This is how the thing works. And so we can do that sort of stuff. All right. Questions about this one? Okay, another special query. I'll just throw this away because I don't want this. Here's what I want to do. I need a number. I need to know how many kids live in each household. Okay? 1, 2, 3, whatever. So let me start it off this way. We'll just do create, query design, and obviously I need households and kids. Okay? Close. Okay. The link's there, which is what I want. The only time you don't want a link there is when one of the tables has just one record in it. Okay. And I said I want to know the number of kids by household, so I'm obviously going to do household and child ID, and I want to aggregate. I don't want to know a list of kids. I want to know how many kids are in each household, so that's a total query, right? And we can just tell it to count up the number of kids. All right. And then I'll run this. And this is not quite right. Let me see if I can find one for you. Yeah, right down here. Notice it goes from 1024 to 1026. Okay. And if you look through there, you'll find other gaps in the household ID number. Okay. Because it's doing what we told it to do, which was this, right? The default kind of join is that inner query, so it's the intersection of those two tables. So for it to be in the answer table, it has to be in both tables. So if a household has no kids, it's automatically kicked out of the answer table. So that's why we skip in a household ID number every now and then. It's because it's the ones that have no number of kids. If you want that, you have to do a different kind of join. And so I'm going to click on this link right here between the two tables. Nope. There it is. And I'm going to change the join properties. You got to get right on the link. Sometimes you have to click on it because it's got to be right on the top of it. And you should get that join properties. Okay. So it does, the default's the first one, which is the intersection of the two, an inner join. But this case, we want to go to option number 2. It says, include all records from the household. So even if they don't show up in the kids record, we still want a record in the answer table from the household table. All right. And then we can just say OK there. And the third one's just the other one if you want it from the other. But in this case, we want one record from each of the master records. And we can do that. And then we can run this. And now notice down here, like 1020 has a 0 in it now. They have no kids. Okay? So, and this, when it says I want a number of something in each household and there's a chance that they don't have anything like that, then you're going to want to switch to that second kind of join. It's called a left-hand join, by the way, if you read about it in books and stuff. And the reason why it's called a left-hand join is because the way I've got this set up. This is the left-hand side of this here. This is the master record. So it says everything from the left-hand side we want to keep plus whatever we can find in the right-hand side. Okay. So when you read the question, it says, I want to know, like for instance, number of cars, number of kids, whatever, something like that, and you want to count from the detail records, and they might not have one, then you want to do that option too. All right. Okay. 2 more kinds of queries. These are, well, actually 3 kinds. But these we can rely on Access to do for us. Okay. Create. There's a query wizard. And you can use this to, there's some queries that you do on a day-to-day basis that are not easy to write, and so Access gives them to you automatically. So we'll go, instead of design, we'll use the wizard. And here's the 4. The simple query wizard. It's too simple. You can't do much with it. That's why I don't even bother with it. The crosstabs query is nice. It's like an aggregate query, but it's in a much more readable format. So we'll just do that one first. So I say, okay. And what I want here is, I don't know, something like party by gender, right? I just want to, so all that stuff's in the adult table. So I pick that. And then it says, what do you want for your row? So that would be, we'll just pick party here. And see, it starts to fill this thing in here so you can see what's going on. And then we'll go on to next. And that should be gender. And then next. Then what summary statistic do you want? We'll just do account on HHID. And we'll go next. And what do you want to call it? That's good enough. And it just does it like, it just makes it a little bit more readable. Okay, instead of doing it with the aggregate queries. In fact, that's all it is, all right? No need to waste a lot of time on that one. Close. Create, query wizard. Find duplicates. Okay. So this is like when you're bringing data in and you've got, it won't let you create a primary key because you got duplicates of the primary key because somehow you got 2 records that are the same in there, something like that. And so this is a quick way to find those, and it'll tell you which ones they are. So there's that other table out there called Twins2, which I created that has more, the household ID number is appearing more than once because I created it that way. So I want to find out what's going on there. So I just do this, and then you pick which table you're concerned about, and that's the Twins2. And again, it can do this on queries too, because they're just like tables, but next. And then what should I match on? And so I would pick HHID and maybe, you know, something like that. So those are the things, if it sees a duplicate of that, it's going to tell me about that. It'll find that, and it'll create an answer record, a record in the answer table. And then whatever additional information do you want to see in this answer table. And I'll just throw everything else in there like that. Okay. So it's going to match on HHID and child ID. And if it finds a match across 2 records, it's going to create a record in the output table. And then what do you want to call it? Like that. And then it shows you the duplicates. Okay. Now, because what I did is I just copied and added it back into a second time. But you can look at this additional information. You can try to figure out which one makes more sense, and then you determine which rows you want to keep and create a table out of it and do stuff with it. All right? And just so you know, it looks like this is why they do that for you, because it has all this crazy stuff in there. Okay. It's not an easy query to write, but they do it for you. And the last query. Again, a very useful one. Create, query wizard. Find unmatched records. I showed you how to find, create a list of households that have kids in them. But now what I want is the opposite. I'd like a list of households that have no kids. All right? So I'm looking for HHIDs in the household table that don't exist in the kids table. All right? So to do that, the only way you can do that is through the query wizard. You can't do this through the query design. So we pick unmatched and go OK. The master table, the one that I'm looking, okay, so here would be households, because I'm looking for households that don't have kids. So here's the list I want to look at. And then over here. Okay. All right, so we're looking for households that don't have kids. So we pick that one. And then we just go next. And then here you tell it which table, here you have to tell it which field's the link, and it'll make a guess here, so that looks like the right thing. If it had something like this, if it came up like this, and it can from time to time, you just pick the two fields that link them together, and then you just click on this guy right here to show that that's the link between the two. And then you go next. And then what do you want to see in the output table? Well, all we really need here is just the HHID, because then once we have that, we can use that however we want to use it, right? And then we just say finish. And there's my list of 874 households that have no kids. Okay. And what it's doing here is, actually, I'll just show, look, I'll just show you this. Every time you run a query, when you set up a query, it turns it into SQL, structured query language, that like the textbooks talked about. That's what SQL looks like. There's stuff that it's doing here that you can't access through your GUI. So the only way to write this kind of query is either understand this or use the wizard. All right, so now you can tell everybody you've seen SQL. Okay. Just use the wizard. It's much easier. Okay. All right. So your turn. Yikes, we're out of time. How'd that happen? All right. So you should, on your own, you should do practice 3 at some point. Okay. And then there's that back in the assignment folder, there's what you have to turn in for next week and all that sort of stuff. Because these are the kinds of questions that are going to be on the exam. Okay. So any questions here? I apologize for running late this morning. I'll have to figure out some way to tighten this up. All right. Okay. So I'll see you guys. No, I won't. I won't see you for almost 2 weeks now. Have a great break.